Hey guys, Dave here. Welcome to Centurion's review of the punk rock band of Wargame Review Institutions. This is Wargaming An Introduction from Neil Thomas. I got this actually at the library, so I didn't pay anything for it. It's a nice book. It's about wargaming as in miniatures wargaming. There's nothing hex and shit wargaming in here. It's all about miniatures, but it essentially describes how to get into the hobby and then gives some example rule sets for about 4 different periods that you can use when you're first starting out, and so on and so forth. So let's go through here and see what's in here. Here's what is wargaming, and like I said, that's miniature wargaming. Alright, Chapter 2, getting started. Which period should you play? It goes over the different periods and stuff, and then it goes over all the different scaling. It's even got 54mm scale here. I remember in the 1970s and 1980s at a convention you might see someone using 54mm figures. You don't really see them anymore. Here's 25 to 28mm. That's what most stuff is done in now. And there's 172 scale. I got zombies in that scale, and a bunch of Iranians and American infantry and stuff. 15mm scale is extremely popular because it's inexpensive, and the sculptors are so good now. You can put a pretty good paint job on a 15mm figure, even though it's so small. 6mm, you're not going to get a good paint job on those. That's mostly for like micro armor and stuff, but these like take 2 seconds to paint, and you can get started right away. Alright, here's talking about preparing metal figures. I don't agree with what he's talking about in here because he doesn't talk about priming it. He talks about putting just black paint on it. You want to use actual primer, but other than that, same with plastic figures. You want to use primer on those too, regardless of what the manufacturer says. And here it's going into basing the figures. And now ancient wargaming, my favorite type of miniatures wargaming. Goes over the different troop types like heavy infantry, heavy archers, war bands, chariots, blah blah blah. Sith chariots here, elephants. And here's his homemade ancient war games rules. These actually aren't bad for beginners rules. I mean, you could have a decent game using just this rule set, even though it's so basic. This is I highly recommend starting with something like this. So basically, victory is just achieved once one side is reduced to 2 remaining units. Alright, here's your sequence of play: charge sequence, movement, shooting, hand-to-hand combat, and morale. That's really all you need for an ancient game. And here it's just going into everything in more detail. And you got morale tests here and stuff too. And here's the army lists. These are pretty basic army lists. This is just something for a beginner. When you get more advanced, you're going to want to use a more detailed army list than this, but this is good enough to get started. Alexander's Macedonian army. Here's some stuff for the Punic Wars. And Imperial Rome. Even got Crusader armies here. Alright, here's Pike and Shot wargaming. And it's got its own set of rules there. This one, the sequence of play is pretty similar. Charge sequence, movement, shooting for infantry and cavalry units, and then shooting for artillery. And then hand-to-hand combat and morale tests. Yeah, it's a simplified rule set too, but this is good enough to get you started. And here's the army list for Italian wars. French wars of religion. Elizabeth I Irish Wars, the 30 Years' War. And what do we have here? Napoleonic wargaming. That's very popular, especially in 15mm. And here's their rule set for it. This one sequence of play is charge sequence, movement, firing, hand-to-hand combat, and morale. So it's a very simple sequence of play. And here's your army list. French Revolutionary Army, and it's got pictures of some miniatures here. Guy did a good job painting them, especially those shields. Yeah, that looks good. Unless they're shield decals, but tell you a trick on shields. Put the shield decals on and then paint over the decal, and you kind of just use the decal as a guide, and it looks really good. If you do just the decal kind of looks out of place because it is kind of plasticky looking, and the rest of the figure is more realistic looking. So yeah, I'll paint over the decal to get the best effect. Yeah, this guy's got some nice photos here. This one here, some really old figures too. Some hoplites there, even though it's actually pronounced hoplite, but in English we call it hoplite. That looks nice there with the pyramids. This is good stuff. Here's some World War II. Yes, they have World War II rules in here too. Here's the rest of the Napoleonic Army list. There's Austrian Army, British Waterloo Army, Ottoman Turks. All right, American Civil War wargaming. This is very popular too, especially in the southern part of the United States. And it's got its own wargame rules for this. This one has a little bit more detail than the others, but it's still very simple. Rallying attempts, charge declarations, movement, firing, that's infantry and dismounted cavalry, artillery firing, hand-to-hand combat, and morale tests. And here's your army list. Alright, and then he gets into skirmish wargaming rules. Skirmish wargaming rules are really man-to-man combat. We're typically in a skirmish game. Each figure will represent one guy, usually. I mean, there are exceptions to that, but that's usually how it goes. Alright, and here's some armies. Sikh Wars, Indian Mutiny, all sorts of British stuff. Second Afghan War, you could have a lot of fun with this. Zulu War, that's a hell of a lot of fun. Egypt and the Sudan, yeah, this is good stuff. Alright, Second World War wargaming, since everyone's in the World War II still. Alright, here's your sequence of play: morale tests, movement, anti-personnel firing, small arms, anti-personnel firing, artillery, and then tank, anti-tank gun, and assault gun fire, and then close assaults. Alright, here's your army list for them. Here it's got the stats for the different tanks. This isn't bad for a beginner's rule set, not bad at all. Here's a British 8th Army at Alamein. Alright, and that's basically it. Not bad for a library book, and I'm pretty sure you can get this probably on Amazon for a reasonable price too. I'll put a link to it in the description if you want to order a copy. Thanks for watching, and have a good evening.